Welcome back. Today, before I start organizing the cards and we hopefully can move on, let's talk about the Phase 2. And it's really only the only news time in this article. I mean, like, apart from New York's opening facilities, the Islanders Arena has officially resumed, so that's pretty good. I hope Islanders fans are going to be hyped for that. And yeah. So today, the NHL released a 29 freaking page article about the pause, and we're going to read the first 5 pages. I mean, not the first 5 pages, the first 5 letters, A through E, because those are kind of seem like the most important. And I will be reading the entire article by myself on my own. I'll put a link in the description down below if you guys want to actually read the article, because it's actually kind of interesting. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoy this, and let's get into it. So now, starting off here, we have a little thing here. The health and player club personnel is the league's top priority. As it relates to adoption of preservatives to help protect the globe against contraction of COVID-19, as well as procedures regarding direction, infectiousness, and transmission of said COVID-19. It is also important that the players have appropriate opportunity to proper conditioning prior to any resumption of gameplay. The NHL has worked closely with the NHLPA and the players on the resumption of the Players Committee and establishing the framework of the phased approach, and has also developed this approach in the input of NHL medical, epidemiology, and infectious disease experts, as well as club medical personnel. This protocol, while very comprehensive, cannot mitigate at risk. A range of cynical scenarios exist, from very mild to fatal outcome. COVID-19 is generally affect the older age groups for those who have previously existed in medical conditions, more so than younger and otherwise healthy individuals. And we recognize that the players and personnel have family and household members who may fall in these vulnerable categories. So we'll start off here with A, the general description. In Phase 2, the first step of the resumption of the league's activities will be to allow clubs to reopen with their training facilities in the club's home city, to permit gatherings of small groups of players, i.e. a maximum of 6 players at a time. So there you go. You have like an entire line, a full line of offense, a full pair of defense, and a goaltender. So like let's say it's Giroux, Voracek, Hayes, and then Provorov and Gostisbehere, and then Hart. That's just an example. Like for the Penguins, it's Crosby, Malkin, Zucker, and then you have I can't think of any Penguins defensemen, and then either Jari or Murray, whichever one. So yeah, sufficiently in local restrictions to permit such gatherings. Will seek the league prior to reopening any of the club facilities, and those jurisdictions which continue to restrict or prohibit such activity from occurring. In order to address the potential comprehensive concerns, the league will work with those clubs to facilitate alternative arrangements, if desired. Further, clubs are required to comply with the public health mandates and recommend best practices of the CDC and/or Public Health Agency of Canada, Health Canada, to applicable to them in the facility with Phase 2 activities are to take place, including any changes to such recommendations that will take place after the commencement of Phase 2. Clubs who are unable to allow access to the players in the facility is contemplated by Phase 2, and where they are concerned, public health organizations shall notify Bill Daly or Julie Grant, so as we can continue to work in the environment. Okay. Traveling to the club's home city. I think this is one of the longest ones that we're going to read today. So, it is recognized that the relaxation of travel and shelters, the place requirements may differ between countries and regions where players are currently living, and where they will be returning to. Their home club activities, clubs should help and facilitate players' travel arrangements to the existing permitted, to enable players who are not in the club's home city, to the club's home city as such these players may deem appropriate, in order to facilitate their ability to engage in Phase 2 activities. To extend travel and shelter in place restrictions impede the delay of your players to return to the club's home city. Please notify one of us so that the league stays informed of the challenges each club may be facing in this regard. Players who do not have a maintained permanent residences over the club or near an alternate location referred to paragraph A, including AHL players, shall be provided separate hotels and accommodations for the duration of the participation in the club's Phase 2 activities as well as Phase 3 of training camp activities, including family-appropriate accommodation of players. All right, so that what they're basically saying in there is that AHL players, even though their season's canceled, they're not on the pause. So, like Phil Verone for the Penguins, he's not on the pause. Mike Vecchione for the St. Louis Blues is not on the pause. Is on the pause. So you need to know. You need to know. They need to have their own hotel. Bam, you're good. And it's kind of confused. That reading that is kind of confusing. Why would you need your AHL players? I mean, like, yeah, if one of the players gets injured, I get that, but like, is the whole team gonna get injured? No. All right. The accommodations must be the same, higher quality. Okay. Players who are returning to their club or chosen alternate location for the location where they were self-quarantined during Phase 1 or being remembered or reason travel expenses incurred do so touch maximum of $1,500 US dollars. AHL players will be reimbursed for all reasonable expenses incurred in traveling to the club, city, or chosen location. Prior to the resumption of the small groups activities, some individuals, players, and permanent personnel, C 1 through 3, traveling back to their club's home city may be required to serve 14-day self-quarantine imposed by local health authorities, such as individuals who are remaining to the club's home public transportation, including commercial and air or rail travel, must serve a 14-day self-quarantine. Okay, 14-day quarantine on players and permanent personnel returning to the club's home city from a high-risk environment, even if they are not traveling via public transportation. Guidelines for these designation high-risk environments will be prompted by the clubs in the NHL in consultation with the NHLPA as soon as predictable. However, the clubs are not permitted to require that players who are currently sheltering in a place outside of the club's home city return to the club's home city so that they can complete a quarantine and in time to participate in Phase 2. Players shall avoid carpooling together from one location to the club's home city. To extent such carpooling occurs, post-travel quarantine individual involved shall be considered in the club's discretion. So that is it for number 2. It's letter C. Letter C is kind of important. Testing for infection and antibodies. As an overriding principle, testing and players and club personnel must be done in a context of excess testing capacity, which shall deprive health care workers vulnerable to populations of symptomatic early detection from infection in such a place, distancing and cleaning, and disinfecting methods, and outline the framework, blah, blah, blah. Laboratory-based RT-PCR testing will be administered to all players and club personnel designated to have player access. Must see paragraph 2 below. 48 hours prior to any person returning to the club training facilities in order to detect, activate, or recent infection with results available 24 hours to individuals who results are involved within 24 hours, such as persons who will not utilize club training facilities and results are available to indicate a negative testing result. To determine which feasible each club's local market, clubs shall engage with their local health authorities as well as any other applicable health authorities such as state, provincial, and federal. To determine whether a symptomatic player or another club personnel is eligible under the local conditions PCR test, either publicly or privately, provided doing such that will take testing resources away from publicly necessary testing. If such testing is possible, clubs shall administer PCR testing to all players and club personnel with player access prior to the resumption of Phase 2 training activities, and if possible, the ongoing basis, as well twice legally and consistently medically recommended intervals, with thought-out Phase 2. Please note that the league is continuing to explore the feasibility of offering the clubs league-wide PCR testing in the club's regard. In this interim, I don't even know what that is. Please continue to explore your club's ability to obtain such testing as described above. If testing is not available for the start of Phase 2, players who participate in Phase 2 activities and players access club personnel must self-quarantine themselves for 14 days prior to entering the facility, or certify that, they have been in a self-quarantine for prior 14 days. For prior 14 days of the club's market, in which event they will be taken to a facility where Phase 2 begins. Clubs shall provide the league and the NHLPA on an ongoing basis details of arrangements that have been in respect to the availability of testing and the provision of exemptions or exclusions to the local stay-at-home guidelines or orders. Should clubs or players request to do serologically testing, I don't even know what that means. Such testing shall be of FDA, NHL for Health Canada serology test. Clearly, FDA for clarity, not clarity, clearly, should be at the level of approval. Not only emergency use authorization EUA, which is not known to some extent to a positive antibody that test confers immunity. As such, all players and club personnel shall practice in the same prevention measures outlined in the document regardless of any antibody status. What? All right, next up here we have the temperature, and symptom checks. So this one's not too long. And then E is education system. That's not long. And then we can talk about the draft. So each club style draft is a process of record symptoms and conduct temperature checks on a daily basis, and not more than 2 hours, to provide each player and club personnel with players access entry to the club prior to the departure of the club's facility. A standardized self-screening checklist will be set on the app to program with maintaining information security for use of all players, player access, club personnel will be provided by a commandment of Phase 2. Clubs shall obtain any necessary equipment, including digital oral thermometers. For use players such personnel, see paragraph G, symptoms persons during Phase 2. Below, which sets a processes of players or player access during self-quarantine and all that good stuff. Club personnel develop symptoms, report doing a 99.5 to a 37.5 degrees Celsius, or otherwise directed by the standard self-screening checklist to following the symptom reporting procedure. Additionally, each club must administer a separate temperature of symptom, which at the entrance of the club facility, and any player of the club personnel with player access shall be allowed to enter. Temperature checks shall be done with a club facility hygiene officer, see Section O, comparably qualified for individual using a non-contact infrared thermometer. An annual result using the non-contact infrared thermometer should be followed up by a contrary check using typomatic membrane during a hospital-grade oral thermometer. The club's hygiene officer, see paragraph O below, must oversee the implementation of this procedure. Similar symptom or temperature checks shall be done for all the other no player access club personnel. Must see paragraph 3 below at the time into the building. The club facility hygiene officer, players, all that good stuff. All right. Well, there's really nothing much in there about like that I really know of, and like all that stuff is important, but like it's I don't want to dull you guys out, even though I'm probably dulling you guys out right now. Doesn't matter. All right. Number 5 is the education system. I can read this whole thing because it's literally a paragraph. Prior to the start of Phase 2, the club's medical director and the head electrician shall conduct a remote educational meeting for players access personnel, and players access club to provide education regarding COVID-19, the frequently faced protocol, no potential risk associated with the involvement of Phase 2 or subsequent phases, and the obligation of players and club personnel to comply with the provisions of this protocol to improve quality of players and player access club personnel to ask questions regarding this current situation. The league will provide clubs with template PowerPoint. Who still uses that? To be used during these education sessions, as well as the other medical and educational materials such as posters, will be displayed throughout the club facilities. The above educational content should be developed or association with the NHLPA. All right, that was easy, wasn't it? All right, that took a little less than 15 minutes, so I think we do have a little bit of time left, and like. It's like the other stuff below is still important, but like it's not like things that are like worth mentioning, So like the stuff down there, you guys can check it out. I'll put it in the link description below, so you guys can go take a look at the article, and it's on NHL.com too. So why not? And yeah, now we're gonna talk about the draft. The draft is planned to have the draft lottery in June, which means the draft lottery is gonna be in July. The draft is gonna be in July. And is it gonna be in Montreal? No, it's gonna be in like virtual. Like through Zoom. I don't know. And they're gonna announce their picks that way. And what better than doing your draft from your home? So yeah, that's gonna be the first one. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, do make sure to drop a like, hit that subscribe button. We're 2 subs away from 130. I can't believe we'll make it. We have 5 days left until the end of the sub goal. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next one.